Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the power of meditation and how you can use it if you have an upcoming surgery specifically. I mean, it can help you in lots of different ways with very challenging situations, but we're going to talk specifically about how meditation can help you going into surgery. Now, to give you a little bit of context with this, my dad has been meditating for pretty much my entire life. I grew up watching him meditate and, I was always very aware of it, but I never really got into it myself. And he tried to get me to get into it, when I was younger. And I don't know if I just didn't have the patience for it or what it was, but it wasn't my thing. So fast forward, I get diagnosed with a brain tumor and I decide to go the surgery route instead of the long-term medication. And I had about 6 months from the time I decided to go to or have surgery until my actual surgery date. So pretty good amount of time. It was kind of a gift and a curse to have that much time because I knew that it was pending. It just at the beginning I didn't know when. To give you a little more context, I was diagnosed in March and in March of 2023. Sorry, I have too many thoughts going on. March of 2023. April of 2023, I decided to go the surgery route, and I knew that I was going to have surgery in the fall, but at that point I just didn't know when exactly. So, as time went on, I decided on having it in November. So that's kind of the timeline that we're working with for this situation. Now, once I decided to have surgery, I first did a lot of research on the operation itself and, how to prepare for it, which I didn't really find much with that. Like in terms of personal experiences, you hear like medically kind of what to do or things like that. But I didn't really have a concrete game plan of how I was going to attack it at first. But then I also did a lot of research on anesthesia because this was my first time having surgery, first time under anesthesia, and I had no idea how my body was going to react to it. So in doing my research on anesthesia, I found out the mindset that you have going into the anesthesia and the surgery can greatly impact, not guarantee, but it can greatly impact how you come out of anesthesia. So, for instance, if I was super stressed out and crying and just all of those things, that can impact how I come out of it. And this is no shade to anybody who, is freaking out before surgery. I completely understand. I've been in your shoes before. So this is no shade, no disrespect, anything like that. This is just me telling you some basic stuff. So when I found that out, I was determined to do all that I could do to go into the surgery as calm as possible so that I could come out as calm as possible. And another big reason why I wanted to come out of the surgery calm, besides just I don't want to freak out, is my surgery was done through my nose and it's brain surgery, but it's also considered sinus surgery. So basically after they do the operation, your sinuses are wrecked. I'm gonna try not to curse here, but your sinuses are completely wrecked. And it's a ton of congestion, sinus pressure, all of those things. So I was thinking, if I'm already gonna be in that state coming out of the surgery, I don't want to make that state worse. If I already have congestion, if it's already difficult to breathe in terms of through my nose, I was just picturing coming out of anesthesia and being maybe confused or kind of in this fog, so to speak, and then feel the nasal pressure and congestion and then freak out and cry and make everything worse. So I wanted to avoid all of that as much as possible. So with all that being said, I committed myself to meditating. I was like, my dad was trying to get me to do this all these years. I just, for whatever reason, couldn't really commit to it. But I figured now was the perfect time because the benefits would be so, I was going to say beneficial. Just so worth it. We'll just say that. The benefits would be so worth it. So I started meditating every single day. And when I started, it was guided meditations. I didn't really know kind of what to do by myself. So I watched slash listened to a ton of guided meditations here on YouTube. You can just type in guided meditations, a bunch of them will show up. And I would do it every single night going into to bed. I'd kind of wind down for the night and then get in bed and turn this guided meditation on, and I would just follow along basically as they were telling you kind of what to do, what to visualize, all like that. And it helped just kind of calm my entire body down. Like, imagine, how do I explain this? Imagine the natural level that your body functions on is like a high level. Let's say like an 8, 9, to 10, where you're just very energetic, very outgoing, but also very, when I say high energy, like maybe anxious energy. That's kind of how I was prior to the meditating, where I just was carrying a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. And I wanted to bring that level down so that my body would get used to operating at a lower anxiety level. So that was the whole point of it. And I wanted to be able to control my body, to control my emotions as much as possible. So when the time came where I was going into the operating room, I ideally wouldn't freak out. So every night I, listened to these guided meditations, and some nights it was really difficult to kind of focus because your mind starts going crazy, especially at night when you're trying to go to sleep. But, sometimes I'd have kind of rough nights, and sometimes I'd have really good nights where I could just visualize so much, and I was at peace with everything, and I trusted the process 100%. So it kind of goes up and down, but pretty much the more I did it, the more calm I kind of became overall. And I talked about this in a previous video. I spent a lot of time in solitude during that timeline of getting ready for surgery. So I think that helps a lot. Now, fast forward the night before the surgery. So now we're at November 14th of 2023. I was at my parents' house, and I was incredibly calm. And I kind of surprised myself, and I really give myself a pat on the back because I came up with a game plan for myself. I stuck to it, and it worked tremendously. So I was up for a while, just kind of naturally, you're thinking, okay, tomorrow is the big day. But I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't crying. I wasn't, anything like that. I was like, this is what I prepared for. Tomorrow is the big day, and I'm ready for it. So then the next day we got up super early, had to be at the hospital at 5:30 in the morning. And if there was let's say there was a camera crew following me that day, you would never expect that I was preparing for brain surgery. Like, if you didn't know the context, if you're just kind of following me, you would never expect it. Get to the hospital, go through check-in and, all like that. And then my family's in the waiting area. I go back, get undressed, put my gown on, put my compression socks. They take a urine sample, and then they did my blood pressure. And my blood pressure was perfect. My heart rate was perfect, just how it normally is. I can't remember the exact number. I probably wrote it down somewhere, forgive me. But my resting heart rate is typically in the anywhere from mid 50s to mid 60s. And so my heart rate was, and I remember watching them as they were doing it, watching the numbers and asking them. So my heart rate was fine. My blood pressure was fine. And I remember in that moment being so proud of myself. I'm gonna try not to get choked up here because I kind of feel it, but I was just so proud of myself that I stuck to the plan. So going into the operating room, I remember everything about it. And there were a couple moments where I felt myself slipping a little bit and really getting nervous, but I kind of went back to my meditation and calmed myself down, said, I'm ready for this, I'm prepared for it. There's nothing else that I can do to better prepare myself for this. So here it is. I trust myself, I trust my surgeons, I trust my support system, my ancestors who are covering me, and this is all gonna be fine. So, went through the anesthesia exactly as I remember, the video saying it was gonna be, hooked me up to the machine and all like that. And then I was out. And 8 hours later, my surgery ended. I was in the recovery room for 3 hours and then went to ICU. So I don't remember the recovery room, but I remember vividly waking up in ICU. And it's kind of like you're coming out of a fog, but my brain was working perfectly. My family was there. I recognized everybody. I recognized their voices. I knew where I was, what was happening to me, because they do a lot of these neurological checks on you after surgery, and it was working. And I remember for a second I don't know if I actually smiled, but internally I was smiling to myself, and I just kind of gave myself a kind of pat on the back, like, you did it. You went in calm. Here you are waking up from surgery and you're calm. And I'll say at that point I was not in any pain because the anesthesia was still anesthesiaing. So I wasn't in any pain at that point. The pain came later, but in that moment, I remember thinking, I did it. I trusted the process, I trusted myself, and here I am alive. And, at that point, I didn't know if I was gonna have any kind of complications, which thankfully I didn't. But in my soul, I knew that I was good, and whatever was gonna come on the other side, or, well, on that side, after surgery, I was going to be able to deal with and to work through. But meditation really helped with dealing with this whole experience. So if you are going through a situation like that, if you've been diagnosed with a brain tumor, really any tumor, but brain tumors are a little bit closer to my heart because I had one. So if you're dealing with that and you have to have a surgery, I highly, highly recommend that you get into meditation, because it's amazing what it can do to assist you. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't go through that and wasn't consistent with it. Again, I meditated every single night leading up to surgery. And sometimes it would be during the day if I was having a really stressful day. Let's say I called out of work because I couldn't do it, or if I left work early, I would come back home and play that guided meditation again. Just cut out all external noise, put my phone on do not disturb, and just listen to that, and it really helps calm me down. So that's a very important tool to have in your preparatory toolbox of things to help you get through the surgery. If you have any questions or like me to elaborate on a certain topic, please let me know down below.